Welcome, welcome everyone. We have a handful of folks here and we will wait just another minute or two. And I want to welcome George and Rick and John. Christina just joined. Martha, it's been a long time. It's great to see you. And Haney, so glad to see you. Namita. It's a very, very small group. It's the middle of summer, and we're going to have a great conversation. And I'm just going to give it another moment, see if anyone else joins. Okay, so welcome. This is the first of two events that are taking place as part of the Grace exhibition, the online exhibition, the inaugural online exhibition on the Bruin Studios website. There is a second one, which I want to announce to all of you. I have postponed because I concluded that summer is not the optimum time to have one of these events. I am really happy with who we have here today. I'm really looking forward to basically an intimate conversation. And I'd like to give more people the opportunity to be part of the next event. So I'm pushing it off to late September. And you can see that if you go to the Grace exhibition and the programming, it's all been updated. So September 26th, 7 p.m. That event is going to feature the other three artists in the exhibition. We have three this evening and three at that evening. And it's Hermine Ford, Alonzo Lamont, and Circe Dunnell. And I've broken this up kind of generationally. Today we have three young artists, and on the next event, we will have three older artists, three more of my age. If you have seen the Grace exhibition, if you've toured it already, great. If you have not, no worries. We're going to have snippets of it this evening, and you'll have plenty of time to explore it on your own, and I highly recommend you do that. We have a link to the Grace exhibition going into the chat box, and you can go there anytime or just cut and paste it for yourself, just for your reference. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start introducing our artists, and I'm going to start with Daniel Anastasio. Daniel is a classical pianist. He also is a bit of a impresario in that he organizes concerts and he's part of groups. He teaches, he lives in San Antonio, Texas. I met Daniel 5 years ago when he was in residence at Yellow Barn as one of the young musicians. And I was there as a resident artist and was really taken not only with obviously Daniel's abilities as a pianist, but really his affect as a humanist and his openness and how clearly he could speak about the human aspect of his work. So let's welcome Daniel, and I'm going to spotlight you. Hey, you want to unmute yourself, Daniel?
I am unmuted. Hello.
Hey, welcome. So listen, I'm just going to have you sit there for a minute. Welcomed. And I'm going to next bring in Phylicia. I think many of you on this call know Phylicia Ghee, and she is frankly a remarkable artist. I've known Phylicia for about 7 or 8 years. We've collaborated a number of times, and I'm always blown away by her spirit and attention to detail and her work ethic. And it's just such an honor to have her here as well. I mean, I'm so thrilled with the artists we have here today. And Phylicia I would love to, when I introduce you, when I bring you in and spotlight you, I would love for you to just say where you are and why you're there, because I think that's a pretty cool development that some folks may want to know about. Hey, Phylicia.
Hi everyone. I'm so honored to be here too, Peter. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this exhibition. Right now, I'm not at the U.S. Capitol, but I'm on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol in a nearby building. I'm working right now as U.S. Capitol photographer, which means that I capture and photograph. I've just started, so I haven't photographed anything yet, but I will be capturing and photographing and documenting many things here at the Capitol, kind of like photojournalism, specifically as an official photographer for the Capitol.
Which is pretty spectacular. And so the reason Phylicia's at the Capitol is she did not have time with this new position to get home to a proper computer and Zoom spot. So there is a third artist, and that is Alexy. And Alexy texted me in a bit of a panic a little while ago, and unfortunately is running late. So we will bring Alexy in as we go. In the meantime, before we start, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a little dive into each of the artists' contribution to the Grace exhibition. We'll chat a little bit about each thing that the artists share, but then we'll have time at the end for a more general conversation about issues, ideas, and topics that come up for folks. In order to make sure you guys participate, I want to point out a couple of things. We have a chat box. I'm hoping most of you are familiar with Zoom and how it works, but just in case you're not, if you hover your cursor over your Zoom window, at the bottom, a menu bar shows up, and one of the items is a chat balloon, speaking balloon. If you click that, the chat box comes up, and you can write anything you want in the chat box. I just wrote hello to everyone. And you can either write to everyone or you can target a message. So if Martha wanted to write Phylicia, she could do that. And so I want to make heavy use of the chat box because we're going to be trying to keep an eye on it for comments and questions. I'm trusting Daniel and Phylicia, and when Alexy joins us, to help me keep an eye on that. The other feature, when we get to the more general conversation, is hand raising. So another item down at the bottom is reactions. And if you click reactions, you can click raise hand. I just raised my hand, and that means maybe I have something I want to say, and maybe I have a question to ask. And maybe at a certain point in this conversation, I'll say, if you have a question to ask, you can go ahead and raise your hand or put something in the chat box, and I'll look for raised hands. Okay, so that's the housekeeping. Now I want to move on, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with Daniel, okay? And Daniel, we are going to share, in the Grace exhibition, you've got two things. You have what I consider a primer to the piece you play, and then you perform the piece. And both are wonderful. We're going to play the primer, but before we do that, I'm kind of curious, because you're a musician. This is originally conceived as maybe by me as a visual art platform. I'm curious what this experience has been for you to be a part of this exhibition.
Yeah, well, as I certainly didn't know what to expect when you asked me, and I just know that I feel like you're drawn to souls, or you're drawn to certain expression, and then you follow that thread wherever it is, whether it's in music, whether it's in visual arts, whether kind of doesn't matter in some ways. And I love that about you, how you're able to, because I feel the same way when I program. Contemporary art, ancient architecture, classical music. They can all work together so long as there's like a common intention or a thread of human condition or emotion. But anyway, um, I was excited to work with other artists because classical music is it's a surprisingly narrow and insular world, and a lot of classical musicians are not very open or creative. Actually, a lot of classical musicians train from a very young age something very specific, and they hone a skill, And so I think constantly they and I need to think outside the box, be more creative, have other artistic experiences beyond just this very narrow field that is classical music. So any experience I get that's able to open me up and able to think a little bit differently, especially because I program a lot of things, is incredibly helpful. So that's one part of it, and then the other is just you're asking me to explain, or you're asking me to explain kind of like what moves me the most, which is something I have never really been asked to do before. Musicians, especially classical musicians, we play pieces all the time that we're asked to play. Hey, can you play this piece by Beethoven? Can you play this piece by Mozart? How about by Bach? And we love it all. We love it all. But to say, what's your favorite thing, or what's the thing that maybe moves you the most and why, is something I actually have never had to answer in my entire life, weirdly. So this was an opportunity to do that, to take a piece that is like, wow, this hits me and I can't stop crying when I listen to this. We all have those experiences with art. And just what is that feeling? What is that moment? What makes me so humbled was just a beautiful thing for me to explore. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, I think it is kind of amazing that you haven't been asked that before, because for me, that is the heart of where the value of art lies, is in that personal connection and the sharing of it. And that's what you do. That's what you do in your video, which we're now going to play. I am going to share the screen so we can see Daniel's video where he talks about the piece he performs in the Grace exhibition. So here we go.
What we do as
Sorry, let me go
classical
back.
musicians.
Do this up. Ready?
My name is Daniel, and I'm a classical pianist. What we do as classical musicians is constantly excavate. We're digging up expression from composers who lived hundreds of years ago, who had something very profound and beautiful to say. And by interacting with the material so directly, by practicing it and performing it and developing a relationship with it, we discover a place of vulnerability and humility and connectedness that I chase on a daily basis. Playing the piano is a cathartic experience for me because it allows me to tap into emotions that might be very hard for me to reach by myself. To me, what's so special about Franz Schubert's music is that joy and sadness are never very far away from each other. The music might be desolate and lonely, and then you turn one subtle corner and it's full of hope. For me, the second movement of Schubert's B-flat piano sonata, the last sonata he wrote in the final months of his life, perfectly captures this juxtaposition between a deep sadness and nourishing hope. In this opening, My left hand plays a steady, persistent rhythm that is kept alive underneath the right hand's despairing melody. This left-hand figure is a heartbeat. As the melody ebbs and flows in melancholic song, the resilient heart beats on. Also listen for changes of the harmony or chords. While the piece begins in a despairing minor key, there are important changes to major, which offer acceptance and hope. It's incredible to me that, knowing his death was near, Schubert chooses to express acceptance and hope through his music, overcoming the darkness that was enveloping him. I wanted to share this piece with you because of how it makes me feel every single time that I hear it. I can relate to the painful, isolated opening, and I know we all have dark moments in our lives, but what's really moving to me about this piece is how that darkness and pain turn into a kind of acceptance that emanates warmth and love. For me, understanding that turning point and the truth in it allows me to feel a very special kind of grace that I'm very grateful for in my life.
Yeah, there's Martha. Yeah, clapping. Thank you. Daniel, that was wonderful. That was wonderful. I want to ask a first question, and that is, how did it feel for you to speak to that personal meaning, never having done it before?
um, it's hard, actually, because, sorry. Sorry.
It's totally okay. This is real. This is real. This is listen, this is what it's about, right?
Yeah, it's I think yeah, no, it's lately I've been trying to um basically it's a cliche, but get more in touch with my feelings, which is, it's kind of ironic that I don't uh I always feel like really good at I've been really good at explaining my feelings, um, but uh, as a way of like defending myself against feeling them in some ways. So like I can I use a lot of the front of my brain, I guess, to philosophize and construct and explain things and justify, but I don't always allow myself to really like let go into those moments of feeling. Maybe because I'm like ashamed to do that, or like I don't really know. But I think also partly as classical musicians, we aren't actually trained not to, because if we feel while we're playing, it's really distracting because we're performing. We have to perform for you. Uh, if I start getting overcome with emotions, there's no way I can. It's too complicated. All the things you have to take care of in the music, and to demonstrate and to show it. So, one of the first times I was like profoundly moved by a performance was when I was 15 and I was at Tanglewood. And I heard someone play Beethoven Third Concerto. I guess it might have been anything, but it's the second movement. Andre Watts playing, and I was crying and crying and crying for like, must have been an hour at least. And I wasn't ashamed of that at all. And it made me feel like, oh, I have to do music. But then, since then, it's like such a rat race, actually, to just to learn the damn instrument. And you get so excited about all the repertoire and the classical music world and everything, but it's very rare that I get to have like that same really profound letting go connection with it. And maybe that's also why like a project like this is so helpful and meaningful for me. It's because it reminds me of like why I'm doing it. Not that I would ever quit, but because it's too important to me anyway. But it's just like, yeah, to remind myself also how much of a profound connection I feel with the music, because I don't always remember that in life. Life takes you away also from art. It's like, there's so many things going on in your life. And last year I got a divorce, and that was a whole other thing, that just it's helpful for me to remember what makes me like what makes me get into that present moment. It's kind of a meditation for me. It makes me so present in a way that like nothing else does, for me. So I think that's been I don't even remember the question. Sorry.
I think that you're really speaking again to both the heart of why I created an exhibition called Grace and what art is ultimately about, which is that full presence, that being present with. Phylicia, I wonder if you want to add anything before we move on to your piece.
um, I'm about to cry too. Like just the feeling of being fully embodied is what I'm getting like out of what you were saying. And like that's what my work does for me too. And I think that that's what grace is, it's just this feeling that when you're like life can get us so myopic into this like pointed focus, but it's like these moments happen when grace comes in, and it's just like it's like a big stepping back. It's a big stepping back. It's like this in this full immersion into your life in a way that makes you realize your heartbeat again. Just like I loved that the way you described the way you were playing, like the left hand being the heartbeat. And that to me is so powerful because it's always there. Like the sorrow is happening, but there's always this persistent heartbeat. There's always this like essence of grace that's accessible, but it can get, you can get focused on that right hand and just be listening to that melody. But then you realize that this one has been carrying you the whole time, and so just like this presence of a multitude of emotions, I think is so powerful. And I think you spoke to that so perfectly, both in what you said and through just like your playing of the music.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You gave us that moment of grace that we all want. So Phylicia, I want to turn on to, so what we're going to do is look at Phylicia. Hopefully Alexy will be able to join us. And then we're going to open it up. So if you've got questions specifically to Daniel about his piece, or after Phylicia's about hers, we'll have time for that at the end. We're just almost halfway there, not even. So we've got time. So I am going to turn to you, Phylicia. And before I share your video, and let me say, what we're going to play is an excerpt of a video called 846. That's called 846 for a very specific reason. And as you and I had discussed previously, to play an excerpt feels almost blasphemous. but because of the constraints of time, that's what we're doing. And I want to be sure everyone recognizes that what we're going to play is actually an abomination of the full piece. And that's what I wanted to say before we played this excerpt. It's about 4 minutes long. But Phylicia, do you want to say anything by way of introduction before I share my screen and show that?
I don't think so. I honestly think we should just play it, and let it speak for itself, and then we can talk about it. How's that sound?
That sounds really good to me. So let me see if I do this correctly again. Okay, I got the right one lit up. And hopefully we're at the beginning. Oh, no, we're right at the end. So let's go. Whoa, wrong one. Let's try that again. Stop sharing screen. Share screen. There you are. Share. And we are at the beginning. Okay, here we go.
The fire has already come and gone. Now the water, still and present, carrying ancient wisdoms and gifts of sustenance, bound tightly to stories of resilience and peace, has flooded the interior passageways of my brain. Cerebral hemispheres now uncover what is true, what is innate to a once frazzled being is actually peace, is actually surrender. Keep me full with your clarity, O Lotumare. Make what was once densely packed as light as a feather floating so effortlessly on your current. Lead me deeper into wisdoms that anchor me in presence and flood me with spirit. Pulsing with life force, Ashe, it is not that I now float above the experience of life, but that it flows through me, so uninhibited that even grief bleeds into an inner deepening of true peace. Stillness, chiseled by life's undulations, grounded in the reality that we will not just survive, we will thrive. We will embrace wonder and peak with joy. We will cry with reverence and peace as it proliferates our bodies and seeps into our genetics so that future generations will experience it as the essence of being alive, perpetuating a new cycle, that of freedom, true freedom, that of bliss, of innate abundance. Ashe.
Really, really nice, Phylicia. Really nice.
Thank you.
You had mentioned to me, we had a conversation previously about, actually a conversation you had with someone else about breathing through the piece. You know, breathing with you, breathing anchors that piece.
Yeah.
And I was doing that a little bit during that excerpt, and you're absolutely right. It's a very powerful way to experience that piece.
Mhm.
And maybe you can just, at this point, maybe you could say a little something
Mhm.
about what led you to this piece.
Okay. I made this piece in 2020, in June of 2020, right after, you know, or during all of the uprisings, during all of this uh, eruption of energy that's been an undercurrent for so long. And it's called 8 minutes and 46 seconds because that's the approximate amount of time that the officer kneeled on George Floyd's neck, murdering him. And I watched the video, and I was in a space of really researching a lot about my ancestors, researching a lot about the histories, doing like studying, you know, William Steele's book, you know, those records. And this happens, and it just, it felt like just this persistent energy that's always, that's been there in this country for, you know, since the beginning. And to watch that really like destabilized me. It really floored me, and it just, I don't even have words for what I felt. But I knew in that moment that I needed to do something. And this was about like creating an offering. It was about creating an offering for myself, but also offering for anybody who would watch it, you know, anybody who needed it. Especially, you know, anybody who feels that the way I felt that, you know. And this was something that brought me back to grace. It was a call back to grace for me, because it I just started to document. I started to document these moments. I was doing all of these things, you know, inherited and learned healing, restorative practices, you could say. But these are just life practices, you know, that I've learned from my grandfather, that I've learned, I'd say through genetic memory, just things that come naturally, you know, working with herbs, you know, trying to nourish my body, trying to take care of myself, doing these things that would restore me in this time and restore my family, you know, because there's a certain type of grief that that came up for me from that experience of seeing that, and all the things, you know, that I've seen and known about over the years. And this was a medicine. This was my medicine. I said, I'm a document. I'm just, you know, it was just very, very impromptu as well. So, you know, I'm making tea and I look at it and I see it. And these are moments that I would say that grace just was like, that it showed a glimpse of itself. And then I said, I'm gonna pick up my camera to remember this, to remember the grace in this moment, in the midst of this pain, you know? And so I would document those moments. And that's not just one of the little snapshots is from inside the film is from years ago. And so this is a practice that I've been doing anyway. Something about photography and video and documentation that's always been really beautiful for me is that it's always helped me to lean in to see different moments from different perspectives, but also it helps me remember. It helps me remember. And so this was an act of remembering. It was an act of asking questions and seeking answers in the doing of these restorative and healing practices that were sustaining me at the time and allowing me to, like, literally allowing me to be okay. In the midst of a storm, it's like I feel like what grace does is it just shows up in a moment that's not okay, but it says to you through whatever form it comes that, like, you're gonna be okay, even when nothing is okay. So that's kind of what I was documenting. And I also felt it was kind of I didn't like that people were saying, I can't breathe. They were chanting, I can't breathe. Because if anything, all I wanted was to have George Floyd to have breath in his lungs. Like, all I wanted was for, us to be breathing deeply, to be fulfilled, to be thriving, to be, living fully. And so I said, I'm gonna breathe for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, because what can I do to honor these lives? Like, I can try to be fully embodied. I can try to be fully present for my life. And so I breathed. And what happened to me after that time, because I breathed consistently for that time, and I felt different. I felt the shift. And so that's why I thought it'd be so powerful to encourage, as a hopeful encouragement, that people would also breathe with me, to shift that internal state, to oxygenate the cells in the body, to activate the vagus nerve, to shift, from stress to some semblance of calm. And at the same time be absorbing the visual medicine, the visual prayer and auditory prayer. And the words that I'm speaking came to me one day. I was sleeping. I had this really powerful dream, and I just woke up and those words were there. So I wrote them down and I spoke them over this piece.
Thank you. I mean, I love that insight in it. I want to say that Alexy has joined us, so I'll be bringing him in soon. But before we do that, a couple things. It's a comment here from George, speaking of your actual intimate performances and recognizing that you managed to translate that into video really well. Mm-hmm. And it's really remarkable to have done that. And the other thing is, before bringing Alexy in, Daniel, do you want to comment on Phylicia's piece before we move on?
I was just floored by it. I mean, it's incredible. And it's, there's so much in it. It's like videography, spoken word, the breathing is like, it really adds so much, because it makes, it's such a kinesthetic, like, all of a sudden it makes us feel what you're feeling, right? So even at the very beginning, it's like we're in the mental state of what you're trying to express right away, just from a couple breaths. We're totally in it, and it forces you to be present. Like, that's something that breathing does. When you hear someone breathing, you can't help but imitate the breathing, or to start breathing yourself. And I was just captivated. I just loved it. I don't know. I want to be more like you. I want to be more, because it's funny how I treat photography, so in my own life, I don't want to remember things. I have the opposite reaction sometimes of, like, why do I want to look at this old photo that's kind of stifled, and, like, we're all trying to be happy, or there's some moment. for me, memories can be very painful, even when they're not actually painful. It's like I look back on myself in the past, and sometimes I just feel some pain. I don't even know where it's coming from. And so I think I've tended to avoid that, So it's kind of encouraging and nice that you find so much and create so much like beautiful expression in it, in capturing the memories, because I don't do that, and I feel like I should do that. I don't know. It's very inspiring.
You've
So
done it this evening. You've both used the word presence, and I think that that's critical. And I think that um, going into there's a faith when you go into these I'll call them dark areas, these painful areas, and there's a faith that there's a goodness larger than those things that transcends it. And I think art offers us a glimpse of that light, of everything being okay, and it can take on the hardest things and kind of must take on the hardest things. That's the job of art, is to take on those things and be bigger than them. So I think you do that, Daniel, and maybe, less consciously, and maybe just when you're lost in the music, but you do it.
I agree too.
Yeah. So listen, we have a third artist who I'm going to bring in. Alexy, I want to thank you for I know you had some hassles getting on, and I'm very happy to have you. Alexy, I've known for just a few years, and Alexy is different from Phylicia and Daniel, who of course are very different from each other. But Alexy is not a practicing artist in quite the same way. He doesn't get up in the morning, make art, and then go to bed and get up the next morning, make art. He makes art at moments when he needs to make sense of his own life. And so he's done a wonderful job of that, such a wonderful job that I felt it was valuable to include him in this exhibition. And so, Alexy, I'm going to spotlight you. And if you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Alexy. Welcome. I hope you've been able to catch some of this.
Yeah.
And so I want to start with a question before we introduce. First of all, I think we're going to do one piece. We're not going to do two pieces. So think about which one you want to show. Okay. And before we play that, it's only like a minute and a half, 2 minutes long. Both the pieces we were going to play are short, but we'll just do one. Before we play either one, you haven't experienced something like this before. And when I say this, I don't mean the Zoom event. I mean being part of this online exhibition and sharing your work in this way. Yeah. And I'm wondering if you could say something about how that is for you, what kind of impact that's had on you, or how you feel about it.
Yeah, no, one, first and foremost, thank you for having me as a part of this, and even wanting to have my work included with us. So, all these talented people. It feels it's a funny feeling because, as you said, I will make or create something more so out of necessity, more so out of reflection, and to have that art live somewhere, whether it be a virtual gallery or somewhere that isn't just a YouTube page, is it's an amazing feeling. I am honored and privileged to have a piece of me able to be shared with others in the way that I've always intended. So or in a way that I may not have intended, I should say. So yeah, I'm just very, very grateful, is the word.
So listen, Alexy, which piece do you want to show? There's either A Life Well Lived or Benediction.
Benediction. Yeah, Benediction. I'll go with Life Well Lived.
Okay. Do you want to introduce it all, or should we just play it and then comment after?
Yeah, I think actually we'll talk about it afterwards.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. So we will simply do this. I'm going to share my screen again. Let's see if I go to the correct one. Okay. And let's see, where is it? There it is. And play.
How do we measure a life well lived? Grandpa used to say, a man is known by his strength, but lifting a weight doesn't create happiness. My dad would say, a man is the same as the money he provides, but no amount of money bags equate to the bags under his eyes. My cousin would say, go find pleasure, find beauty, find treasure. But with every diamond he collects, he savors little and looks for what's next. My grandmother would say, savor the flavor on every plate. But although she can eat, she still can't defeat her mind taking bites out of all her memories. My uncle would say, laugh like you can't breathe, like the air's filled with smoke. But despite every joke, life left him broke. Didn't crack his spirit, but it did crack his hope. My mother would say, to the moon, to the stars, if you love in life, life loves you right back. And yet look what life did. Turned her parents to kids. Turned her love into energy they feed off to live. So here's a question I'm struggling with an answer to give. How do we know how to measure a life that's well lived?
Bravo, Alexy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love the what feels like a surprise of you walking off at the end. You know, that's I mean, it's sort of building to that, but it still feels surprising. Do you want to share a little bit about what lies behind that video?
Yeah, absolutely. So I made that right as I was finishing college, and well, it was a piece that I had been kind of writing and going back to right after college, and I was trying to decide the kind of person I wanted to be, right, and who who I wanted to, what label or role, or what I wanted to characterize myself as. And I'm very, very connected to my family. I mean, and I'm lucky in that way. I think that I can say that I'm, very, just connected is the word to my family. And I look to them when, I don't have the answers. And so I just kept trying to see whose example maybe I should emulate, or who had the right idea and how they carried their lives, because these are the examples that I've seen for all of my life. And as I looked, I saw that there was flaws in everyone's thinking of what what they deemed, or what, in my perspective, it seemed like to me that they deemed as the most valuable asset of life. So, and I just thought it was just there. In a way, it's kind of, I don't know what's the word, but like, I don't know if ironic is the word, or just it just struck me that if I took in from everyone's perspective what was one quality that I thought that they like really honed in on, there was something to break it down by that same standard, that within their own lives. And so I just thought, you know what, it really is, there is no right answer, and you have to define that yourself, and you measure it by your own accord. And so that's why it just like it, and that came from writing the piece. I didn't know where it was going exactly until I finished it.
And that's the grace piece, quite honestly. The sense of lack. You had the sense of lack and inadequacy, of maybe choosing wrong.
Right.
And in making this piece, you were delivered a different kind of answer, which is that it doesn't matter what you choose, you can kind of have all those things that all your relatives have.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you. Listen,
you.
I want to open it up to everyone. We have officially have 5 minutes left, and I'm happy to go, over a few minutes if people feel like chatting. I'm also happy to wrap up in time if folks want to go that way. But first, Daniel, Phylicia, do you have any comments you want to make? And I want to say, if any of you in the audience wants to comment about any of the pieces you've heard, ask a question, comment on grace overall as a concept or an exhibition. Now's the time to get in line and start raising your hands and putting things in the chat box. But as you think about if you want to do that, I want to turn to Phylicia and Daniel and give you guys a chance to make any comments you wish on Alexy's sharing.
I guess I'll start. Just I was very moved by it, Alexy, and especially the struggle to get up. That effect you had, or the heaviness of it. Also, and along with your word choice was like so powerful, and the music was perfect too. The anticipation. And this kind of anxiety, this like organ going on in the background. Yeah, it's just very powerful and very thought provoking. And I often find myself in that same mental state. Kind of this, I have a very relativist view of like the world. And I like a lot of Taoist sayings, which is like wait and see. I say that to myself a lot. If something, I try not to overreact to things because I feel like things change so much. But that can also get me really into trouble, again, because it prevents me from being in the present moment sometimes, where it's like sometimes I look down. Sadly, I mean, I find myself condescending to, or I look down on someone who's reacting very emotionally and expressively in the moment. Because then I tell them, I in my head, I'm saying, okay, well, just hang on, be rational. Things might be different, or there's other perspectives. And I really don't like that aspect of myself because it can be such a um, I don't know. There's got to be a balance there somewhere for me where it's like appreciating someone's honest, real reaction to something, and then also having that longer approach, having that like wide angle view, where it's like, in other words, I want to work on validating people's immediate emotional reactions, no matter what it is, because that's so real and instinctual. Um, Sorry, I'm like going off on a tangent, but anyway, I loved it, and it got me thinking a lot of things. So about myself. So thanks.
Thank you. Phylicia, you wanna jump in?
I feel like I'm still digesting that one. It's like I want to watch it again. It was very powerful. I feel definitely what Daniel was saying, like that heaviness, and then the getting up, and then it's back. It's like, I don't know. I feel like you kind of gave us a visual representation of like these undulations of life, that are constantly happening. And I also love the ending, what Peter said. Like I don't know, I felt like I breathed a sigh of relief like at that moment. But I just think it was really, really powerful. And I loved the black and white. I loved how it got me really focused, on that central moment, and just what that meant. And it really definitely like caused, I don't know, I just felt it. And I really, 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 it resonated with me.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
In such a short time too, it's like very concise. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like a poem, a visual one.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. I will make a comment. I'm looking in the chat box, and again, I will say George has weighed in, and has pointed out, Alexy, that what you've done is you've successfully aligned images, sound, and words. And he adds, which is not often achieved at such a high level. And what's interesting to me in talking with you about this piece is you always talk about being a writer. And I honestly wasn't even sure how to describe your art practice, because I know you think of it as writing, but then you do this beautiful work with video and sound. And I wonder if you want to say something about the relationship between the sound and the writing, or the video and the writing, you know?
Yeah, sure. So the sounds that are not my own, I will, the sound for that was actually the backdrop of a movie called Interstellar. But it just, when I heard it, I just felt so compelled by it that I would sit in it and just listen to it and listen to it. And then like, that's usually the poems actually start with the sounds. I'll listen to something and it'll move me. And then I'll think, okay, what is it that I'm hearing here? What is this telling me? And so then I'll start writing. And then after I start writing, I say, okay, well, I don't want to just have these words stay on a piece of paper or on a screen, because then you can't really feel what I'm saying unless I say it the way that it's supposed to be said. So then that's when I try to speak over the sounds, and then the video piece comes at the end when it's all right. Now, if I close my eyes and listen, what do I see? So I try to bridge those together as much as I can.
Nice, nice. So listen, I see that John Viles has raised his hand, and I think I'm going to spotlight you, see if that works, and I'm going to ask you to jump in with what you raised your hand for, okay?
It was actually Debbie.
Oh, hi.
Hi. And I was very curious that Alexy was introduced as not practicing art every day, but I believe he does. And he, as a writer, is an artist, and as a videographer, photographer, I mean, I think you must practice every day, Alexy.
I don't. I'm actually a sales guy. I guess artist daylighting as a salesman.
IBM, right?
Yes, I do.
But I think your point is well taken. Of course, if you're thinking, you're creating. It's going on. It's going on. I think that's your point. I imagine it's like it's always there, and it's under the earth, and then it sprouts. Yeah. So thank you for that point. I think that's an excellent correction.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to unspotlight you and ask if anyone else. It's 8:03, and so I'm not seeing anyone else raise their hands. And I guess I want to invite each of you to make a closing comment if you wish. And it could be either about something we've discussed this evening, or maybe something about the overall exhibition experience, whatever you want. What would wrap it up for you? And we'll try to keep it brief so folks can move on to the next part of their evenings. Phylicia, do you mind going first?
I just want to thank everybody for being here with us. I'm kind of glad it was intimate. It feels nice. And I'm really grateful for just the flow of this exhibition, and exploring it. And I hope you all do go back and look through it, because even, I love your work leading in the stories in your work, Peter, leading into, each of our various works and how we each view grace. And I think it's really powerful. And also, I think the whole exhibition itself is medicinal, that it does remind you of what grace is, that grace is present, that is ever present. It helps you tap into grace And just it offers this softening that the way grace does. And so I'm grateful to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's been a wonder. I mean, this is why I do this, is for this connecting, and it's really a great feeling to be a part of this conversation with you guys. Alexy?
Yeah, thanks. I would say that for me, yeah, just as a whole, just grateful. Like Phylicia said, everyone should check it out. Check out the work that you've done to create the foundation for this exhibition, and it's just been a very cool experience connecting. And as was said before, the whole thing is medicinal, and each art piece plays that role in providing that sort of medicine. That when we first spoke, Peter, about grace, and we talked about what grace meant, we said that it was sort of like the music in the silence. And I think this exhibition with all these talented people really captures that feeling. So, just thank you.
Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, for me, even today, it's like a healing that I didn't know I needed. I think that happens a lot with me, and maybe it happens with other people too, where it's like it's not that I'm necessarily going through something profoundly difficult in any one time, but then when I'm brought back to moments like these, it's like it makes me, it reminds me of what's really important, to me. Um, and so that's what I'm most grateful for, is like there's no value on this. It's like it's infinite value. It's just so incredibly important. And it's like, yeah, I guess the fact that I feel like this could be the seed. Your website and this project could be the seed for, even though for you it probably already feels like a fully grown tree because you've done so much work on it. But I feel like it could really be the seed of a way of connecting people and inspiring a variety of collaborative projects that could grow to a lot more. I want to go on the website and just check out absolutely everything right now, and I think it's nice that we could all reach out to each other as artists and be like, hey, you were part of this exhibition, I was too, and I think we all would know what that feels like and know what that means, which is really amazing. So thank you so much for creating this.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I want to, in closing, point out one comment in the chat box, which I think really gets to the heart of summing up the power of this evening. This is actually Kathy Odell, who also wrote the introduction to my section of the exhibition. So shout out and thank you to Kathy, who wrote, "I'm struck by how vulnerable everyone has chosen to be in their work and in person here tonight. I'm thinking that choice is what allows for grace. Thank you." And she has thank you in bold caps. Absolutely, that choice to overcome that fear and allow yourself to be in that place of vulnerability opens space for grace to enter. All we can do is sit and hope to receive it, but we need to be open to it. And that openness calls for letting the walls down and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. And I think, Kathy, you nailed that. So thank you, Phylicia, Daniel, and Alexy, for in your art and in your presence, letting those walls down, letting that vulnerability in. Daniel, you have no idea how great I knew this conversation was going to be when you broke down in tears the minute you opened your mouth. That just created a space for authenticity, which is a beautiful thing. So thank you all. We will wrap this up, and I will stop recording it and may hang out a little bit if anyone wants to join for a conversation, but I'm going to say goodbye and thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so